Coming out of lockdown in England, the Prime Minister sets out his roadmap with the aim of lifting all restrictions by late June.
The end really is in sight, Mr. Speaker, and a wretched year will give way to a spring and a summer that will be very different and incomparably better than the picture we see around us today.
From March the 8th, all children will be expected to go back to school. Secondary pupils may have to wear face masks in class. Also from March the 8th, people will be able to meet one other person outdoors for a coffee or a picnic. It's hoped 2 households will be able to meet from the end of March. The lockdown will be dependent on 4 key tests, including whether hospitals are at risk of being overwhelmed and on the success of the vaccination programme. Early new data shows that the vaccines are significantly reducing the number of people being admitted to hospital and dying. There'll be a long wait for cafes, pubs and restaurants, not expected to open fully to customers indoors until May. And disappointment for tourism businesses and holiday makers, as in England, we won't be allowed to stay away from home until after Easter.
Well, whilst it's great that we've got a date to work to of the 12th of April, it's very disappointing that we're going to miss Easter for the 2nd consecutive period. That's a challenge for us.
And coming up in sport on BBC News, could we have fans back at Wembley in time for the climax of the European Championship? We'll be looking at the government's roadmap for sport.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. The Prime Minister has set out his roadmap for the gradual lifting of lockdown in England, starting March the 8th and aiming for a final lifting of all restrictions by the 21st of June. But each stage will be followed by a pause of 5 weeks before moving on to the next, as long as the data suggests it's prudent. Boris Johnson said there can be no such thing as a COVID-free future, but the end is in sight after a wretched year. So, from the 8th of March, all children in England will go back to school and further education colleges will open. In Wales and Scotland, some children have started to go back from today. Residents in care homes will be permitted 1 regular visitor. We will be able to meet outdoors with 1 other person socially for something like a coffee or a picnic. From the 29th of March, up to 6 people or 2 households will be able to meet outdoors, including in private gardens, and some outdoor sport will be allowed. From April the 12th at the earliest, shops, gyms and hairdressers will be allowed to open, plus outdoor hospitality venues such as pub gardens and theme parks. And from May the 17th, cafes, pubs and restaurants will be able to open fully with customers indoors, and restrictions to outdoor mixing for groups of up to 30 people will end. And by June the 21st at the earliest, all restrictions will end. Well, our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, is in Westminster this evening. And Laura, that's just the briefest summary of a 60-page roadmap released by the government.